Alright, testing 1, 2, 3. What's going on, fellow rogues? It's Maskmayor here, and welcome in for Chapter 4 of Nightmare Country. So, again, I'm still, kind of technically on my full-time, hiatus from live streaming at the moment. I'm going to be, returning to my full-time thing, on New Year's Day. But for now, I'm still trying to at least make sure I do these, the book chapters. So this is going to be, the last one I do before, I return, to full-time streaming. And, also I've been, of course, doing, little Phasmophobia and, other ghost hunting game streams along the way, with some other stuff planned this weekend for multiplayer things, probably with more Lethal Company since we haven't played that in a bit, or maybe some more Phasmo. We'll see how things go. But anyways, that's then. This is now chapter 4 of this, chapter 4 Bullseye, picking up where we left off previously. In the last chapter, you guys were introduced to Kaiein and Lupe, and also there was a lot of foreshadowing with the appearance of Lord Serac, the vampire lord that turned Dusk into a vampire a few years prior to the start of the book. Basically, during the events of the prologue. So, following Kaiein and Lupe's introduction, it was pretty much shown that Kaien's a demon, Lupe's a werewolf, and they're two, best friends, who have, been friends since childhood. And following a few events, they are now walking through Raven Rock Hollow after they got into a bit of a bar fight. And, signs show that Kaiein may have possibly, put a wedge between him and a close friend that, he had from the bar. A girl that, had a definite thing for Kaiein. But, again, due to Kaien's abilities, it's kind of hard for him to really get close to much anyone he feels really probably couldn't handle, how strong he is. Or he's basically, he feels like he'd be running a risk of losing control of his abilities. So he kind of, distances himself from, some people in regards to that. Because he doesn't want to hurt anyone. So, anyways, with that said, like I said, Kaiein and Lupe are currently walking down the streets of Raven Rock Hollow, just picking up, of course, right after, the end of the previous chapter. So we're going to get started with that right here. Alright, so Chapter 4, Bullseye. You gonna be okay, man? Lupe asked Kaiein as they walked down the street. All the while, most of the human beings on their daily commune walked right by Lupe as if he was just the same as any of them, while others stepped away to avoid him. Such is how the people of Raven Rock Hollow looked at creatures of the night, including a black-furred werewolf with a large green mohawk. Kaiein just kept his eyes on the path ahead as he walked with his hands in his pockets. Kaiein? Lupe said. The only reply he got was a nod from his friend. A few minutes later, they were across the street from where they left their vehicles, Lupe's pickup truck and Kaien's motorcycle. Kaiein knew that Lupe wouldn't be able to transform back to a human for a full hour, given each individual cell of his body had changed itself around, so it would take time for them to prepare for another change. In short, if Lupe tried to change back too early, his body would tear itself apart, leaving him in several pieces on the ground. One thing that made Kaiein happy about the whole situation, however, was that when Lupe transformed, it countered whatever effect alcohol had on him, sobering up instantly. "Let's just get to the school," Kaiein said, but no sooner had he done so than a blur sped past him. Lupe was wasting no time as he bolted across the street to his truck, with Kaiein now behind him at a distance. "Asshole." Kaiein stayed under his breath as he pulled his keys out of his pants pocket and lowered his goggles over his eyes. "I still don't see why you never wear a helmet," Lupe said to Kaiein as he got in his truck. "I just don't like the way they look. Plus, it's not like I'm going to get hurt anyway," Kaiein replied as he seated himself on his bike. It was a sports cycle, or as it was commonly nicknamed, a crotch rocket, with a jet black frame and white accents. Nothing fancy or spectacular, though it had a special modification in the form of a holster with multiple titanium cables and locks for the two items securely fastened to it. Left outside the bar on purpose since Kaiein left felt it was a waste of time to carry them in. One was a solid black recurved bow he had named Desperado. The other was a broadsword passed down through his family for centuries. Due to Kaien's superhuman strength, he had a habit of breaking the previous strings that the bow had by pulling back too hard and too quick, even when he barely pulled back with a small fraction of a string to cause them to snap. All manner of drawstring types have been used from nylon to custom-made titanium strings to no avail. So to solve this, the drawstrings on Desperado had to be heavily reinforced with a seemingly unbreakable material that only he and the one who customized bow for him knew of. The end result being one-of-a-kind bowstring that Kaiein had yet to reach the limit of. And who asked Kaiein of the source were only told they came from an extremely ferocious breed of monster. The increase in durability also meant that Kaiein still had to show restraint in how much pull he used to fire an arrow due to the combination of his raw power and the tensile strength of the string, resulting in much more force behind his shots. He also made special arrows when there was a situation that arose for using other materials sold to him by the same man who customized his bow. But Kaiein preferred his bows to be handcrafted wooden bows made of oak with metal heads screwed on, or carbon fiber ammunition with a pointed tip that was hand cut into the shaft without any attachment needed. The broadsword was named Ghostbreaker. It was 4 feet in length. Its handle was wrapped in leather made from the hide of a griffin, and dyed red with a pommel made of chimera's bone sharpened into a spike. The crossguard and blade itself were both black as night, but polished to a point where one could see the expression of fear on his own face through the blade in the last split second before Kaiein cut him in half. Black as night, and black as the inside of their closed casket. Ghostbreaker's name, however, wasn't given by Kaiein, but instead came from a legend passed down through his bloodline. The story claimed that when the sword was first forged, a wandering spirit flew into the path of the blacksmith's final hammering on the blade, trapping the spirit inside the sword. Its color was also said to not have been from the original forging, with the legend also claiming that with each life taken by the sword, it darkened it with a shade of polished silver to its current ebony hue, as the phantom trapped inside was soaked with blood, corrupting its aura and driving it insane. Kaiein, however, cared just as little for legends started by his bloodline as he did for those in his bloodline that predated his mother and father. The sword was sharp and effective at what he used it for, and that was all that mattered to him. Though the times that someone who had heard of the myth behind the sword's forging asked Kaiein if it was true, he always gave the same answer. A shrug of his shoulders and a simple, "Who knows?" Many monsters had fallen to Kaien's sword ever since it was given to him by his father on the day he died 9 years before, although there was one monster that Kaiein wanted to kill more than any other when he found him, the one responsible for the death of his parents. Kaiein grasped the handle of the sword for a second as he thought about his mother and father before sliding into the black scabbard tied to his back, followed by arching Desperado around his shoulder and across his chest before he started his bike up. Seconds later, he and Lupe were on the way, with Lupe riding beside Kaiein. So it was on the radio. Kaiein says he turned the radio on to a rock station and listened to the DJ talk. "Alright guys, those motionless and white would cause a death from the album score and the end of the earth. Now it's time for a 1 hour block of music with Avenged Sevenfold," the DJ announced. Kaiein smiled. Avenged Sevenfold was his favorite band. "Okay, let's kick this off with Welcome to the Family off of their album Nightmare," the DJ continued before playing the song, causing a bigger smile to go over Kaien's face as he sang along to it. But Kaiein stopped when he caught another voice singing alongside him. He didn't look to his left, only to see Lupe running next to him when driving his truck. "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" Kaiein snapped before swinging his fist at Lupe, who ducked under it. He looked down at his feet, which were staying at a steady pace even though Kaiein was driving at around 60 miles per hour. "Hey, I have to question, what's with the violent aggression?" Lupe said, using the lyrics of the song to reply. "Wise ass, get back to your truck." Kaiein said as he pointed at the truck as if Lupe was actually a dog. "Oh, come on, man. It's a straight road all the way to the school, and then there's no traffic. Besides, I love this song. You only got one life to live, so why live it if you can't have fun?" Lupe said as he tried to turn the radio up, only for Kaiein to slap his hand. "I don't know, Lupe. You tell me. Are traffic tickets and jail time your idea of fun? Your ghost riding your truck down the highway while running next to me in your werewolf form, which is asking for unwanted attention. Kaiein said, keeping his eyes on the road. Lupe responded by jumping up in the air in a flip, rotating 180 degrees as he did. When he landed, he was turned completely around and running backwards with his arms crossed while keeping the same amount of speed as when he was running normally. Only now he wasn't watching where he was going. Well, now if they stop me, they can charge me with not keep my eyes on the road. Plus, how could the police truly identify me since there are multiple werewolves in the city? Most of us look alike unless we're in our human form. Lupe said as he showed a large smile on his one face. You have a green mohawk like a giant troll dog that rebelled against his parents, you idiot. Kaiein shouted. So, what's your point? Lupe said with a smirk. Lupe, knock it off. Kaiein snapped again, his eyes still on the road. Lupe could hear by the sound of Kaien's voice that he was getting angry, which he enjoyed given this was a reaction he liked to get out of him sometimes. It was all part of their rivalry. One of them was constantly doing something to get on the other's nerves, and usually for Lupe it meant doing crazy or reckless things that he knew Kaiein would scold him for. Vice versa, Kaiein most of the time pissed Lupe off just by acting so calm and focused in almost any situation they ended up in, which Lupe didn't want to admit he was actually envious of because Kaiein had seen enough scenarios where he was outnumbered and outgunned. Situations where most people would have given up. Kaiein had a rough past and he had the scars on his body from it. Except for the breaks and the tears that each time Kaiein walked out of whatever situation he was in on his own 2 feet. Still standing and at times with a blood-covered smile on his face. Though not every time was an occasion of calmness for Kaiein. He was just more difficult to fully anger than Lupe. Why should I stop when I'm having such a good time? Lupe asked as he tilted his head. Maybe because we're coming to a 4-way crosswalk and traffic isn't exactly on our side. Kaiein said calmly as he pointed his finger ahead. Calm to the point that Lupe gave a small irritated growl. Even so, he looked behind him and himself and saw that Kaiein was telling the truth and that the street light they were coming to was illuminated with a red glow that meant stop. Normally it would have been no big deal to him, but this time it was considering Lupe wasn't in his truck to stop it, and cars were driving past so rapidly that there was no way they would be able to make it through. In response, Lupe did the next best thing by performing another quick twist flip to run normally again and ahead of Kaiein. What are you doing? Kaiein shouted. Lupe ran over to one of the poles on the street a corner and pushed the light change button. Kaie's motorcycle and his truck were coming up quick. He knew Kaiein would slow down, but his truck obviously couldn't, so he could only hope that the light would change in time. Come on, Lupe says as he waited for the light to change. As Kaiein drove closer, Lupe noticed that Kaiein wasn't slowing down like he thought he would. If anything, Kaiein had sped up and was now racing past his truck. What's he thinking? Lupe wondered. Only a few seconds left before Kaiein got to the heavy traffic. The light pointed at the traffic turned yellow, when the last remaining split second it turned red, while the one facing Kaiein turned green, giving Kaiein and Lupe's truck a clear path through. As Kaiein sped by, waving at him, Lupe growled once more before catching up with Kaiein and finally jumping back in his truck. You know I hate when you do that. Lupe yelled when up from the driver's seat. Do what? Kaiein replied back. When you don't act scared in seemingly hopeless situations. At least when I try to scare you. Lupe said. It wasn't hopeless situations that wouldn't have killed me, though putting other lives on the line so recklessly was kind of stupid. Kaiein said. Yeah, you're right, it was a bit risky, Lupe said. A bit is an understatement. But let's not think back on it. We're almost there. Kaiein said as he's nodded his head in front of him. They can make out the top of the building that was Raven Rock University up ahead. Then, as if it was a reminder how quickly things get worse, the radio on Kaie's motorcycle picked up a news flash which interrupted the song he was listening to. We interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin, the newscaster said. Oh, what now? Kaiein said, slightly irritated as Lupe listened also from his truck after picking up on the same broadcast. We're coming to you live from Ray Rock Hollow's Dragontown area where a large-scale shootout is taking place between the police and a group of armed assailants just only minutes ago robbed one of the local convenience stores. The police seem to be slightly outnumbered, and although no casualties have been brought to light as of yet, what we do know is the elderly couple who own the store were both shot and are being rushed to the hospital, the reporter said. My God, Lupe said. He then looked over towards Kaiein, who was staring at the radio more intensely as he listened. The reporter continued. Hang on, it appears the shootout has stopped. Oh my God. The robbers are holding 2 children that we can only assume are brother and sister at gunpoint. Doesn't look good, people, the female reporter said in haste. Lupe saw Kaie's normally calm expression on his face turn to one that gave Lupe a clear indication of what was about to happen. Those gritted teeth. Eyes that sparked more and more under his goggles with each passing second. Lupe saw Kaie's arms start shaking and his muscles tense up as he tightened his grip on the handlebars of his motorcycle until his hands started bleeding. Lupe knew what Kaiein was intent on doing. Kaiein, calm down, man, and let the police handle it. There's too much at risk. We can't afford anyone needed attention, Lupe said, hoping Kaiein would listen to him. Lupe got a reply when Kaiein did a U-turn in the middle of the road and sped back where they had just come from, towards Dragontown. Damn it. He says I have a temper. Hey, wait up, Kaiein, Lupe said as he turned his truck around and followed him. Uh-oh, Finch said as he and Ren walked down the hallway. They were exploring the school Finch got a strange feeling in his head. What? Ren asked. It's Kaiein. I just sensed the rise in his power. He and Lupe were on their way to school, and for some reason, Kaiein turned around and went back to the heart of the city. Seems something's happened in Dragontown. A store robbery with little kids being held hostage. Finch replied. Well, would it be best we head over there? Ren wondered. No, seeing as if we leave abruptly, it'll make us look suspicious, Finch answered. It is not them, is it? Ren asked, a serious look on his face. Finch closed his eyes, seemingly thinking, though in reality he was actually reading Kain's mind deeper, along with doing a mental scan of the area where the crime was taking place. No, whoever Kaiein has his sights set on, there's a lot of them. But they're human. They've inflicted pain on others. That's what Kaiein is, Finch said, cut himself off. He's what, Finch? Ren asked. Finch only opened his eyes and looked at Ren. His power just spiked up yet again, Finch said. That means nothing, man. We both know that he refused to let it raise to a level that could cause human casualty too easily, Ren asked. Yeah, I just hope he keeps it that way, Finch said. Across school and country myths and legends, Fiona found herself looking up from her book in an explanation on basilisks, as once again she noticed the existence of an odd power. Scarlet was sitting next to her and noticed her facial expression. What is it? Scarlet asked. I just sense a powerful aura again, she tried to say. No talking in class, Miss Morella, seeing as you're on thin ice as is for your outburst earlier, he said. Fiona shook her head and went back to studying while Scarlet did the same. She caught enough of Fiona's words to know what it was. Back in the city, Hell's prophets were walking around. There were so many people they could just kill to vent their frustrations, but they were so worked up that they were unsure of doing so out of paranoia that the next person they attacked could be one of those from the other night. Truthfully, they weren't afraid so much as they were simply nervous. They were, however, all too much stubborn to admit that due to each other, regardless of the emotion. As they walked, Stonewall and Bane were the center of attention to the city folk, considering they stood out the most unlike Nero and Dimitri. Although Dimitri got a decent share of odd looks and laughs, given he was wearing a ridiculous outfit that, while faded and protecting him from the sun, it resembled a tight black unitard with a ski mask. What the hell are you looking at? Stonewall yelled at past a couple who ran in terror at the hulking monster's voice. Got a problem? I'll bet that cutting your eyes out will solve it, Bane said to a man in a suit who also ran away. Bane attempted to run after him, given the endless day of chasing and running prey, but Dimitri put his hand out to stop him. Calm down, you two. No need to wasting your breath on these pathetic cretins, Dimitri commanded. Normally, he would have took in on killing all his friends, but there was a lingering issue of paranoia. Yeah, you're one to talk, considering that fit you tossed a while ago about losing your finger, Bane pointed out. Dimitri didn't say anything, though he looked at Bane coldly. Don't even try to intimidate me, since you look like some kind of dime store Teletubby intending to rob a gas station, Bane said, which got a laugh out of Stonewall and Nero. As they continued to walk, they heard the faint sound of a motorcycle coming closer. Dimitri's large ego took a hit from Bane's remark, but he wasn't showing it. And now he was indeed ready to kill, regardless of the paranoid mindset. Dimitri saw whoever was on the bike approaching quickly. He would make it succinct enough to go ahead and subside his anger, yet painful enough to enjoy it. One pounce. One slash from his sawtooth sword as it slowly made its blood-gushing grind through the skin, muscle, nerve, and bone of his victim's body as he cut through his spinal cord. In the end, the sweet side of his victim falling in two halves on the street, as the crimson liquid that Dimitri partook in daily like a high shelf of wine cooled on the dark pavement. For someone as thick as Dimitri, the feeling was practically orgasmic, considering his love for killing. He's done for, Dimitri said to himself as he jumped high in the air and quickly flew at the person on the motorcycle. His blade drawn would trace a blood splatter from his earlier victim. Not Dimitri had forgotten to clean the sword. He simply decided not to, so he could admire the patterns of blood from his handwork until he decided to clean it. That or another victim's life essence covered that of the previous one. Bastard, so you get to kill and we don't? The hell with you, Dimitri, Bane said. As Kaiein raced along, angry and determined to stop the store robbers, he glanced up and saw Dimitri gliding quickly upon him. Kaiein let out a snarl. Damn it. Bigger things to take care of, and this happens. Really didn't want to have to resort to this right now, but fuck it. Let's see how he likes a few embers in his face. Kaiein says he tightened the grip on his right hand on his handlebar. A faint orange light and black smoke made itself known as one of Kain's powers manifested. Each demon in his bloodline prior to him had this trait of being able to harness a single element out of 5. The elemental alignment came at birth with no way of knowing what it was until later in life. Aeromancers in his family had been able to use wind, while cryomancers and terramancers had ice and earth-based magical abilities. Electromancers could use electricity. Kaiein, however, used a different element altogether. I don't ask for the name of the one who I'm about to kill, but know me as Dimitri Porta. Remember the name and the eternity of death you're about to face is the one who sent you there. Dimitri yelled as he came down towards Kaiein and tried to swing a sword at his back. Kaiein, however, jumped upwards off the bike, tugging his legs upwards as the blade passed under him before landing back in the seat as the bike maintained balance and speed. Kaiein retaliated with a swing of his fist and a fiery right cross. His hand no longer glowing, but instead ignited with a bright flame. The fifth elemental alignment of his bloodline made Kaiein a pyromancer with the ability to create and use fire. As it connected with Dimitri's face, a large blast of flames exploded out, sending Dimitri flying backwards with his mask burned off entirely. Nice to meet you, Dimitri. Now fuck off, Kaiein said as the flame in his hand dissipated before continuing on his way. Dimitri sailed several feet back and crashed to the street. He was now bleeding as he bounced and slid across the pavement. Dimitri! Nero yelled out. As his teammates ran to his aid, they noticed that he was holding his head and screaming in pain. Since his protective mask was destroyed, he was now exposed to the sun and his skin burned and the smell of scorching flesh made their eyes water. Get me to the shade! Get me to the shade! Dimitri screamed. Pulling into the alleyway between two buildings, they expected his burns and couldn't tell if the damage was more from the sunlight or the punch that he got hit by. Dimitri then pushed them away as he crawled over to a nearby puddle of water. My face! My beautiful face! It's tarnished, flawed, below class, ruined, Dimitri yelled as he noticed the burns in his reflection. Dimitri, it'll heal just fine, so calm down. And Bane, you just had to say the hell with him, didn't you? Nero says he pushed Bane to push them back. Shut up, runt. How was I supposed to know that was going to happen? Regardless, I'm not going to let that guy get away, so you and Stonewall stay here with him. Bane growled as he took off in a run to try to go after Kaiein. But as he got into the road, he heard a horn blow behind him and turned to a red truck advancing on him. Too close and too quick to dodge. The speeding vehicle collided with Bane with enough force to send him several feet up in the air. A loud snap sounded as Bane landed neck first on the pavement. Stonewall and Nero watched as he laid motionless, his neck bent in a disgusting position. Bane! Nero yelled as he ran to his friend, who still wasn't moving. Nero shook Bane furiously until he heard him let out a low moan. From there, Bane slowly got to his feet, his hands and knees, with his broken neck sickly hanging down. You alright? Nero asked. You stupid ass, does it look like I'm alright? Bane snapped as he grabbed his skull with both hands and twisted his neck back into place, holding it steady until his bones mended. Look, don't give me that tough guy shit, alright? I thought you were dead at first, Nero lashed back at Bane. How many times have I explained to you that I can only be killed by silver or decapitation? Bane reminded him. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting. Anyways, please tell me you got a glimpse of what that guy looked like. Nero asked Bane in regards to the one who hit him. No, I didn't. Let's get back over to Dimitri. There's no point in trying to go after him because there's more than one red city in the truck in the city. Bane says he walked back over to the rest of the group. Nero could tell that Bane was hiding something. His voice was rushed, and aside from that, Nero knew that Bane could find the one who ran him down if he wanted to based on scent alone. Which is what made it so odd because Bane was too prideful to let someone he felt a reason to kill escape. What Nero couldn't understand was why Bane, a literal beast and loose cannon always ready to fight, was seemingly afraid. The man behind the wheel of that truck. Could it have been? Nero thought to himself. Hey, runt! Get the hell over here! Bane shouted at Nero. Nero responded by using his ability to transform into a hawk. He didn't get to see the guy driving the truck that hit Bane, but he did however get enough of a look at the one on the motorcycle to be able to find him without much problem. The eyesight that the hawk form gave him would make it easy. There were two obvious conclusions that came to Nero's mind. One was that the one on the bike wasn't human if he could hit Dimitri within cause an explosion of flames to exit his fist. The other conclusion was that they were both together for how fast they were both going. By finding one, Nero would surely find the other. I'm going to track those two down, Nero said in his hawk form. No, let us regroup first, you idiot. If I get damaged this badly so easily, what makes you think you could do any better? Not to mention he threatened my beauty, therefore I want to kill him myself. Dimitri said as he jumped off the ground, staggering a little as he did. First off, Dimitri, quit bitching about your face, because when you heal, it'll look fine as it did before. Like I said already. Secondly, I'm not going to fight him, I intend only to observe them. And to answer your question, what makes you think I can do better than you is that I'm not you, Nero said before flying off. That self-centered little son of a, Dimitri said before trying to fly after Nero, only to have Stonewall pull him back. Before Dimitri could say anything, Stonewall pointed at his head, reminding him that his mask had been destroyed. Nero flew across the city as fast as transfigured wings could carry him, while halfway from his location, Kaiein was closing in on the robbers. Hold on, kids. I'll be there soon, Kaiein said to himself. Lupe followed a ways behind Kaiein. His senses were picking up the terrible sounds and smells of the crime at hand. The nauseating mix of gunpowder and pointlessly shed blood burned in his nostrils. The ever unwanted noise of collaboration made him wince. Gunshots aimed at the sky as a warning sign for the law to keep their distance from the homicidal bastards holding the guns. Screams and cries for help. Harsh profanity aimed at scared children held hostage. With a gun pointed at their innocent skulls, they cried for their mom and dad. Lupe experienced all this before even reaching the scene. But he knew his friend didn't need to hear or smell any of it to know how dire things were. Kaiein stepped up to similar situations and at times even worse ones many times before. And his reason for all the scars hidden under his clothing. He'd been stabbed, beaten, clawed, shot. Many types of wounds and the pain that came with them that he knew the dire nature of. Because while Lupe couldn't detail how bad things could be at the scene of bloodshed with just a few scents and sounds, Kaiein found out only when he got there from the pain of first-hand experience, both of the victims and whatever damage he took. The maelstrom of pain Lupe's animal senses picked up. A cyclone of things that would make anyone with a small amount of pure heart stand up and toss his life away if he had to save someone he didn't know. Lupe knew that the life Kaiein lived revolved around his passion for standing up for people who had to endure pain in hopes that he could protect them, even if he had to go through pain himself. Although Lupe had killed humans before, Lupe changed his life around to help them after seeing Kaiein do so. There was never out of malevolence before when Lupe did it, and if anything, he hated killing, let alone feeding on human beings. He simply couldn't control his animal side, and it wasn't until he saw Kaiein struggle with his own powers and how he learned to own them as part of himself that Lupe did the same, becoming human in both forms in the process. Lupe felt forever in debt to him for helping him change, though Kaiein did it indirectly, hence why Lupe dedicated himself to having his back no matter what. Though Kaiein stood on his own just fine, always pulled through simply by just not giving up, which is why Lupe had a deep respect for him beneath the rivalry, pranks, and arguing. Lupe and Kaiein had been trying to avoid unwanted attention, but the time at hand wasn't about getting their faces plastered on the news. It wasn't about the true nature of who or what they were being made into the reason for people to praise them or whatsoever fear them. The time at hand was about the lives of two little children who deserved to live and not have their lives wrongfully taken away. Lupe watched as Kaiein took a quick right, speeding up as he took the corner sharply, and upon doing so, he finally saw the hellish glimpse of the crime scene. A group of 9 armed men stood in the middle of multiple police officers and a SWAT team who were only holding their fire for the safety of the kids. Lupe didn't have to be a fortune teller to know what Kain's plan with action was. We're only going to give you one last warning. Now back off before we kill them both. The apparent leader of the robbers says he continued to hold his revolver at the skull of the little girl he had hostage. Let us go. Let my sister go. The boy says he started to pummel over the lead robber's leg. This was met with a backhand to the little boy, knocking him to the ground. The boy didn't stay down, but instead got back up and continued to fight bravely. You just won't stop, will you? Maybe this will keep you down. The robber says he aimed his gun at the boy's head and caught the trigger. The crowd that had been gathered in the area started to scream and shout more loudly out of concern for the two kids. The screams subsided when they saw a flash of black and white pass by them and straight at the leader. An angry yell and a sound unlike that of a firecracker filled the air, along with the globbles of blood and several pieces of shattered teeth. The crowd watched as the leader sailed backwards at least 20 feet, leading him rolling on the ground until he came to a stop, motionless. Kaiein unclenched his fist as he glared at the unconscious criminal. Maybe for your sake, that'll keep you down, Kaiein thought to himself before looking at the children. The rest of the robbers surrounded him as he sat on his motorcycle. At the same time, Kaiein wrapped the two kids in his arms. You two all right? Kaiein said, pulling his goggles off his head and off his eyes and onto his head before giving a smile to the kids to let them know he meant them no harm. On the other side of the scene, the same female reporter who had alerted Kaiein to the events in the first place continued her broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who have been listening in, it appears that someone else has stepped here in the middle of the chaos. For the moment, the children appear to be safe thanks to this man, but the question is, who is this person who has saved them? The female reporter said. The little girl broke down crying as she buried her face in Kain's shoulder, while her brother sat there crying as he wiped his blood from his mouth from being hit by the robber. In reply, Kaiein put one of his hands on the girl's head to shield her and comfort her while he used one of his claws from his back pocket to wipe the boy's face for him. At a distance, no one could see the tears descending from Kain's eyes himself. For him, watching someone cry was one thing, but watching a child cry was unbearable. Who is that? One of the police officers said. He's my friend. Things are under control now, Lupe said as he walked up to the police officer, who stepped back at the side of his werewolf form but quickly stopped as Lupe raised his hands up, signaling he wasn't a threat. What do you mean things are under control? A tough-looking burly man in a white dress shirt, black suit pants, and a red tie said as he approached Lupe. He was opposite the captain. Exactly as I said, Lupe replied. In case you haven't noticed, your friend is surrounded by 8 armed men. We figured maybe since he took down their leader, they would retreat, but they haven't. Anyway, who the hell are you and who is he? The captain said. Lupe Kinley, sir. And his name is Kaiein Bates. What I mean by everything is under control is that there's not nearly enough then to take Kaiein down. Consider if they had 1,000, then maybe he would break a sweat. Maybe. Lupe joked, making the captain look at him in disbelief. As the gang of robbers continued to advance closer, Kaiein narrowed his eyes as he stared all of them down. He wasn't afraid for his own sake, but he was concerned about the 2 kids he was guarding. I want my mom and dad. I don't want to die. Please, Mr. Hero, take me to my mom and dad, the little girl said as she continued to cry, her showing a fear stabbing deep in Kain's heart. Oh, look at the poor baby crying because she's scared of the big bad man, one of the robbers said, a kind grin on his face. These kids are the only thing saving you from the same fate your leader met. So given someone already pissed me off today after harming a baby, I wouldn't be talking, given that as soon as they're out of here, I'm going to be putting my foot over your ass and be flossing my shoelaces. Kaiein shot back. The rest of the robbers laughed at Kaiein, who, while the one he insulted twitched his eye and started to grind his teeth. Kaiein, however, ignored them, even as they continued to slowly come closer. Even in the grave situation, Kaiein had a thought settle in his mind. The little girl called him a hero. Something he had been labeled as before. It brought warmth to his soul to hear it, though he considered it a slap in the face to people to be called one compared to the brave men and women surrounding him at this very moment in a circle of flashing lights who were the law enforcement, firefighters. The brave men and women there had fought and died in the world's many wars. Kaiein had a choice in what he did, but they did it regardless because they signed up and took under their wing the consequences. Kaiein felt he didn't deserve the honor of the title hero, but if it would give the two young lives he was pledging to protect, they hope to stay strong, faith to believe things will be okay. Today he would take the title the girl had given him as he'd done before. He would act on it. Don't worry, sweetheart. I won't let anything happen to you. But you and your brother have to do me a favor, okay? I'm going to get you to safety, but afterwards, when I tell you to run, I want you to do as I say. Do you understand? Kaiein said as he stared the girl in her eyes, still smiling at her to raise hope and then looking at the boy. Both kids nodded their heads as Kaiein looked around. Driving a motorcycle wasn't an option since he was holding them both kids. There was only one other thing you could think of to do. Okay, here goes, Kaiein said to himself before jumping from his bike and running a clean sprint toward a nearby car. He's making a break for it. Get him! Well, the robber said. Kaiein kept both children's shield by his arms while a hail of bullets followed after him, only inches away from his feet. All the while, they ricocheted off his broadsword with a steady amount of pings instead of going to his back. Although he wasn't as fast as Lupe, Kaiein had superhuman speed and could run a maximum 40 miles an hour, which was enough in some scenarios. But not the best when it came to dodging bullets. Come on, Kaiein, you can make it. Lupe thought to himself as Kaiein got closer to the car. Only seconds passed before Kaiein noticed blood fall into the ground as he ran. As he checked them, he saw that it wasn't from the kids. He then noticed that his left arm was bleeding from a gunshot wound. Your arm. Mister, you're hurt, the little boy said to Kaiein. Don't look at it, kid. I'll be alright. Kaiein said as he got closer and closer to the car. The second bullet found its mark in Kain's ankle while another grazed his cheek. The ankle wound caused him to fall forward, but he spun as he did, landing on his back and breaking the two's fall. Ha! We got him now, one of the robbers said as he loaded another clip into his handgun. Your friend is a dead man, the captain said to Lupe before attempting to order his men to move in on the robbers. Before he could give the order, Lupe put a hand over his mouth and motioned for him to wait. To everyone's surprise except Lupe, Kaiein quickly jumped back up and limped the rest of the way to the car, showing no facial expression that he was in pain. If anything, he had a determined look on his face. We're not human, remember? Lupe said to the captain before crossing his arms. Oh Lord, I need a vacation, the captain said before falling out on the ground unconscious. Bad turn of events because without him, the police force could only watch what was going on and unable to take orders. Real image to fall back on this guy is. And the bad thing is, he's in a city full of those like us, so he should be used to this kind of thing. Lupe joked to himself before looking back at Kaiein, who was seated on the other side of the car with the kids next to him. The robbers were still firing their guns, but were wasting their ammo as the shells bounced off the vehicle. Or so it seemed. Okay, we're safe now. Are either of you hurt? Kaiein said before looking the kids over again. Cascade of blood falling down his cheek and another flow of blood oozing from his leg thanks to his ankle wound. We're fine, mister, but what about you? The boy said concerned as he glared at Kain's bleeding face. Kaiein glanced around in the car to see the robbers no longer advancing. I'll be alright. Anyways, what's your name, kid? Kaiein said as he pulled his sword off his back and looked at his reflection on the blade, wiping the blood from his face as he did. What was originally a bleeding wound was now a tiny abrasion similar to a cat scratch. Seconds later, there was no cut at all, as if the injury had never happened at all. It's Aiden, sir, and my sister's name is Rain. The boy explained, looking somewhat surprised to see Kaiein had healed so quickly. More so after hearing the sound of metal hitting the pavement twice in succession, seeing the two bullets that had originally hit Kaiein were now on the ground. As Kaiein healed, the bullets had been pushed out of his body. Aiden. Rain. If ever the day I have to consider those names for my son and daughter, Kaiein thought to himself. Kaiein quickly came back to reality when he caught the strong, unmistakable scent of gasoline. One of the robbers had shot the fuel tank on the car, and a steady flow of gas was flowing out of the car. All it took was one stray spark. They were out of time. Okay, Aiden, this is the part I told you and your sister to be ready for. You showed courage and a love for your sister a while ago, and when you stood up that guy, and you took that punch like a man. Now show that courage and love one more time as if everything depended on it, because it does. Protect your sister, Aiden. Run. Now. Kaiein said swiftly, yet slow enough to make sure that Aiden understood. Aiden grabbed Rain's hand and quickly ran, dodging a flurry of gunfire as he did. Thankfully, Kaiein had gotten them close enough to the crowd so they wouldn't have much risk of getting hit. As they disappeared into the mass of onlookers, with a bit of help from the few at the front who weren't kind enough to reach out their hands out and pull the children in, Kaiein breathed a sigh of relief. They were all that mattered to the robbers because they were the initial hostages, but now that they were out of harm's way, attention would no longer be on them. Only Kaiein. Carol listening at home, the children have been saved. A person who has been identified as a demonic resident of Rainrock Hollow by the name of Kaien Bates is the one to thank. However, things look grim for him as he is pinned down behind a car under heavy fire from the armed robbers, and the car appears to be leaking gasoline. The female reporter continued to broadcast, sounding somewhat concerned now. Okay, time to wrap this up. The kids are safe now, so Kaiein started to say. His words, however, were lost in a large explosion that came from the car, causing them to disappear among the outlash of flames. The crowd let out multiple screams at the side of the car exploding, while the robbers let out shouts of accomplishment. The police looked away in regret for not being able to help without their commanding officer. Lupe only smiled. A man you claim to be your friend just got killed and you're smiling? What's wrong with you? The officer said angrily. Lupe pointed at the car, and that's when it was heard. Not a scream of agony, but anger. They watched as the car suddenly flew into the air, not from an explosion. It had been thrown. The robbers scattered as it came close to them. They didn't hear a voice from the smoke. If I wanted to hit any of you, then I would have. But once I'm finished kicking your asses, you're going to wish you ran to the path of that car instead of away from it. Kaiein said. Everyone caught sight of Kaien's silhouette standing in the cloud of ash, heavy smoke. His clothes torn from the explosion, and ash's painting has formed grayish and goes white hues along with black from the smut. His sword was drawn and his teeth were bared, and his eyes sparked red yet again. The crowd was a mixed reaction of gasps and cheers at the sight. Then they all watched as Kaiein walked forward. One of the robbers fired a shot to connect with Kaien's shoulder, getting no reaction from him other than a livid glare. Yup, he's pissed, is all Lupe said. As he walked, Kaiein tore off his jacket and tank top, both of which had been ripped to shreds with more hues of black, gray, and an addition of red noticed on his body, all from ashes and blood. Most of the crowd looked away at the side of his upper torso. His arms, chest, stomach, and back were covered in shards of glass and pieces of warped metal lodged in his skin from the car explosion. As if being pulled by many invisible hands, makeshift shrapnel exited the wounds and fell to the ground with crimson tips on the razor-sharp edges, while the lacerations on his body finished healing with no visible scars. At any other time, the reaction would have possibly been different from some of the females in the crowd who got a glimpse of Kaiein without his shirt, given that aside from many scars to each had their own story of where they came from, he had a share of lean muscle as well as several chest and back tattoos that complemented those on his arms as a love letter to the comic books, video games, anime, and music he enjoyed. His physique was from a steadfast dedication to keep his body ready for any task that came along without any care for trying to impress the opposite sex. His mindset was that having powers like his wouldn't get anyone too far if they weren't in a physical condition to do something with that power. Bring the sword to a shootout? You really are crazy, one of the robbers said to Kaiein. In response, Kaiein glanced at all 8 of them and smiled before tossing his sword, causing the robber to jump as the blade buried its tip into the pavement right in front of him. Kaiein followed up by drawing an arrow and firing in his direction. A loud ping sounded off, making the robber flinch yet again as the arrow ricocheted off the sword and changed directly before landing inside the barrel of another robber's gun, who at that exact moment pulled the trigger to fire at Kaiein. The gun exploded from the block barrel with a resounding bang, burning both hands as he fell to the ground screaming in pain. One down, Kaiein thought. The robber he had tossed the blade at was too distracted by what happened to his partner to notice that Kaiein had already closed the distance between them. Kaiein jumped up and slammed his knee hard into the robber's face, sending him back first to the ground with a broken nose. Upon seeing the third robber reload his gun to fire, he shot another arrow at an angle towards the ground. This one also ricocheted as it bounced off the pavement. The robber was just putting the clip in his gun halfway when the arrow hit the bottom of the clip. Reloading the gun itself, he also knocked the gun out of his hands and high into the air. At the same time, Kaiein fired another arrow that found its mark in his foot. While struggling to remove the arrow, the gun fell hard on the robber's head, causing him to fall dazed to the ground, while the impact of the gun's landing fired off a bullet that shot the fourth robber in the elbow, incapacitating him as well as he fell to the ground screaming. 3 down, Kaiein thought. Kaiein saw the first robber attempt to get back off the ground. In response, kicked him hard in his damaged nose, sending him back to the ground. 4 down. The fifth and sixth robbers both started to arm their guns frantically. Kaiein, in response, gripped his sword and gave a strong pull in his direction, forced a large chunk of pavement into the air, level with his head. Forceful kicks sent the piece of street towards them as Kaiein armed and shot another arrow, with enough pullback to break through the piece of pavement and crack into 2 separate pieces. One piece found its mark in the fifth robber's stomach, knocking him to the ground. The sixth robber, however, wasn't as lucky. A rash came from the crowd, not unlike that of a hard tackle at a football game, as he fell over holding his groin. 6. Kaiein said to himself as he picked up his sword and arched over his back, staring down the last 2 robbers. Both of them had their guns aimed, yet were scared to fire. They just watched 6 of their partners who were all armed get incapacitated. It only took 12 seconds for the man in front of them to do it with only a handful of arrows, a couple of kicks, and a piece of pavement. Kaiein ignited a small flame in his hand and quickly waved it, creating a large wall of flames between him and the robbers. What the fuck is this? I can't see him, the seventh robber screamed as he fired everywhere in front of him, hoping a stray bullet might hit Kaiein. Keep shooting and hope for the best, the eighth robber screamed as well. Suddenly a hand reached through the flames, grabbing the seventh robber's gun and crushing it before Kaiein stepped through the fire. Every single one of those bullets could have hit me, and the best you could still would have been, best you could have hoped for still would have been unattainable, Kaiein said. A fierce kick to the robber's kneecap was delivered at an angle dislocated, leaving him injured also as Kaiein walked towards the last one, as he waved his hand again to dismiss the flames. 7, Kaiein thought. Fuck you, the eighth robber screamed as he tried to fire at Kaiein, only to be met with a faint click. This continued as he repeatedly pulled the trigger. Bang, 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 bang. Kaiein taunted with each click and each step closer. Finally, bang. One bullet did indeed fire. Kaiein fell on his back as the bullet connected dead center with his skull, and his eyes rolled up in the back of his head. More screams and gas came from the crowd as the robber let out loud yells and cheers. Yes, I had one bullet left, he yelled. I wouldn't be cheering, asshole. That one bullet was extremely lucky given it was a cartridge jam that you still managed to fire. Which, while a cartridge jam that you still managed to fire, was also very unlucky for you because it ended up being only a reminder how fucked you are. The voice said. He turned to see Kaiein standing there, alive and smiling at him with all his teeth showing, even though he had a bullet lodged in the middle of his forehead. You! But how? He screamed in sheer terror. Kaiein just laughed at him. Oh my god. The look on your face is priceless. You seriously thought you killed me? You act like people don't survive getting shot in the head since it's not fatal at all. Kaiein says he held his stomach like it was hurting from laughing so much before clapping his hands and putting them on his knees before pointing his finger. People barely survive a bullet to the skull, let alone get up and like it didn't happen, the robber retorted. Is this city a tourist spot today or something? This guy at a bar we just left who tried to get touchy-feel with a girl I know, he ran away when he saw I was superhuman. Now you don't seem to grasp it. Welcome to Rave Rock Hollow, asshole, Kaiein stated. He then reached over and grabbed the guy's gun. Get that back, the robber yelled. Many of the people in the crowd were wondering how a scary situation with innocent lives on the line turned into only one robber being belittled comically by what seemed to be a man who had no way to be killed, who moments ago seemed so serious yet now he's making jokes. Even so, their laughter was proof that it was pretty funny. The only one out of them who really knew what Kaiein was doing was Lupe, though even he was laughing. Kaiein let the gun over as he dangled it by the barrel. I mean, really, man, what the fuck is this? Did your mother refuse to get you a Red Ryder BB gun for Christmas when you were little? Kaiein joked. The man stood there shaking his fist. Do you ever shut up? He yelled at Kaiein. See, now that's the second time I've been asked that today. Anyways, I want to make origami, Kaiein said in reply. Kaiein started crumbling the gun in his hands like it was paper while showing a wide-eyed expression of false captivation before scrunching his face, letting the piece fall to the ground with his hands shaking like he had horrible nerve twitches. You know, I've always sucked at origami, but since I just made it rain, I think I'm getting better, Kaiein said. My gun! You son of a bitch! The robber yelled. Are you perturbed because I can make it rain and you can't? Well, if it upsets you that much, then I hope you had the receipt to get a new gun. Though given it was made in Germany, who also made the Shamwell, I'm sure you would have been better off buying one of those and just trying to strangle someone with it. Kaiein continued. Suddenly, Kaiein showed a serious expression as he dug 2 fingers into his open wound in his head, gripping the bullet and pulling it out. A flick of Kaien's fingers sent the bullet flying at the robber with just as much force as if it had been shot from a gun. He hit the ground screaming as he dropped his gun, a puff of smoke rising from the ember-encircled hole that had burned through his palm and out of the back of his hand. Fact is, I have friends as well that can finish you and your buddies off. Kaiein said before snapped his finger as the wound in his head healed. Wait, don't kill me, the robber said. I'm not the one you need to worry about, Kaiein said as he walked off. Lupe sniffed the air, sulfur and burning flesh. His ears picked up the banshee-like screams and the sound of many hooves on a fast gallop. His sense of touch felt the faint rumble coming along the ground. They were coming. Everyone listen. Cherish your sanity and fall to the ground with your faces to the pavement. Cover your ears and close your eyes as well, Lupe yelled at the crowd that were still amassed. No one budged. Lupe let out a growl. Did I stutter? Hit the fucking ground now! Lupe yelled even louder, causing everyone to listen as they lay down stomach first with their hands over their ears and their eyes to the pavement. In the distance, a storm of flames advanced as Kaiein continued walking without looking back. Even though he was the one who summoned the hellish creatures that were making their way down the street at that very moment. An army of burning phantoms. Their appearance of twisted mass of charred flesh and contorted faces that peeked out from under hooded cloaks. The race wailed, as if insanity driven and tuned to the galloping of their mounts. Four-legged beasts of bones and an afterglow of hellfire that followed their hooves as they arrayed themselves to do what Kaiein summoned them for. But looking at them as they wore it was something he didn't like doing. Being only ethereal beings, the spirits had no actual form to use for harming someone in the material sense. At least not unless Kaiein decided they should. But things that were about to happen were going to be agony for the robbers nonetheless. as the all the crimes they ever committed, every person they wrongfully hurt, and all the lives they ruined were now coming back to literally haunt the criminals. This was one of Kaiein's dark drives, the Ghost Rider Stampede. Kaiein stopped as he listened while counting the screams off in 8 varying octaves. The robbers already had been in pain, only now the screams were much louder. Kaiein glanced over and saw Lupe, who was immune to the effects of looking at the phantoms due to being in supernatural ties himself as well as not a target of them. Even though these humans lived in Ravok among creatures that the outside world considered only myths, their frail minds were still ill-equipped to handle such horrors as race without going insane from seeing them compared to such supernatural beings as they shared a city with, like Kaiein, Lupe, and the students of Ravenrock Hollow. Kaiein noticed that Lupe was slightly nodding his head. He knew that Lupe understood the point of him using the attack. Kaiein only drew his sword with no hesitation, staining it with blood if he was against something like him. Monsters, as he heard the humans say countless times. Not that he denied that they were just that. But in his mind, there was a difference in being a born monster and acting like one. Kaiein used Ghostbreaker and less lethal methods when it was against a mortal in question. Same would occur with the Ghost Riders, with a non-lethal lasting impression for them to learn from. The sound of gibberish-driven voices, with the absence of all screams, and the fading sound of horses running in the distance told Kaiein that they did their task until they'd leave as quick as they had arrived. All that remained was the smell of sulfur and burning flesh that would still linger in Lupe's nostrils, and 8 mentally traumatized individuals sprawled out on the street with their minds completely shattered, although not permanently. It was a side effect of having their evil will stripped out of their very souls. It's safe now, everyone. They're gone, Lupe called out, leading to the crowd standing back up. Some catching sight of the same storm of flames evaporating in the thin air in the far distance, far enough away that their sanity wasn't affected. Kaiein walked over to each robber and waved his hand in front of their faces. None of them so much as noticed his hand. Well? Lupe asked as he walked over. Temporary insanity, intended reaction from the spirits. Snap out of it around 6 months from now without any lasting effects other than a lost urge for doing misdeeds. Even though they've done terrible things, they'll have a second chance to make up for it after they serve jail time, Kaiein said. Except that guy didn't get the memo that he was supposed to get a vaccination for villainy from them, Lupe said as he pointed toward behind Kaiein. The leader regained consciousness. He was pointing his gun at them both with his hands shaking violently. Most of his face horribly swollen from when Kaiein punching him. Stampede didn't affect him because he had been unconscious at the time. Something Kaiein had prevented from happening with the other 8. The criminal fired several bullets as Kaiein casually approached while talking to Lupe. You see this jackass right here? Now, how in the hell is it that he's a leader and he shoots like a stormtrooper in an eclipse? Oh wait, stormtroopers can't aim for shit in broad daylight anyway. Safest place to be literally is right in front of his gun, Kaiein said. Kaiein heard several clicks from the empty gun. I've already run this bang joke into the ground with your friend who was all gaga goo goo on the ground over there, so can we skip to the part where I break your gun, or do you have another clip to try to shoot me with, Kaiein joked. Dude, in the time you spent talking to me a second ago, he actually shot you once in the stomach, Lupe said casually. Kaiein looked down to see he indeed was bleeding. Oh damn, I was gonna pull that I fired again, then I missed line from Gamer Grumps, and then he ruined it, Kaiein said before once again starting to walk towards the leader. As the man began to run away, Kaiein continued walking. Get your cute little ass back over here. I just want to cuddle, Kaiein said in a falsely seductive way. Get away from me, you crazy fuck, the leader yelled. Crazy? I'll show you crazy. How about I just kill you? Kaiein yelled. He then armed himself with his bow before aiming at the robber's head. Now hold on a minute. I know you're pissed, but remember your morals, Kaiein, Lupe yelled, trying to stop him. Kaiein quickly adjusted his aim and fired the arrow, piercing directly into the robber's knee from behind with such velocity and pullback that the man was forced to a backflip before landing on his stomach. Screaming in pain with what breath had been knocked out of his lungs as he held his leg. Kaiein then turned and looked at Lupe. How long have you known me? If I wanted to kill him, be it if it was my code in question or not, I would have in the beginning, Kaiein said. Slightly agitated, he put his bow around his shoulder and walked towards the incapacitated robber with his hands in his pockets, leaving Lupe there embarrassed for thinking like he did. When Kaiein finished his advance, he saw that he was trying to pull the arrow out of his knee. He responded by stomping hard on the robber's injured leg. A large crack formed down the street from the impact of Kain's leg, and upon this, whatever was still intact, the man's knee was completely shattered, as a much louder scream filled the air than anything Kaiein or Lupe had made happen that day. You asshole! You sadistic monster! The robber screamed. Monster? Asshole? Just as much as I admit that I guess I am both those things, you're still far worse factors to both, and because of that, I'm making sure you can never walk again to rob another store. Or at least not get far if you make an attempt to do so, Kaiein said as he twisted his foot on the man's now even more injured leg. Kaiein then quickly reached down and grabbed a handful of his hair before dragging him along the ground towards the closest building he saw, a skyscraper. We need to talk, pal. In private, Kaiein said quietly, not even looking down at the robber as he kicked open the doors of the large building. You bastard! You shot me! You destroyed my leg! I'll kill you, I swear! The robber got out and short gasped as Pain shortened his breaths. Yeah, I know what the fuck I did, and I don't care. Now, as far as death threats go, do you really think you're in the position to threaten someone who just decimated every single one of your friends by himself? Kind of replied before pressing a button on the elevator he came to. You think just because you got powers that you're better? What's it say about you and that you had all that strength but had to hit me twice from behind? Well, I see you as a coward. The robber lashed out, containing his pain during words. Kaiein stared at him as a single glow of red shot out of his eyes. I'm a coward? Coming from the guy who held two children at gunpoint to protect his own ass, not to mention you and your gang shot an elderly couple? No. The only coward here is you. Now shut up or I'll make you. Kaiein said as he put his face an inch from the robbers. Kaiein waited a few more seconds before the elevator finally came down. But as he got in and pressed the button for the top floor, an unholy sound materialized. Elevator music. Oh my god, this is torture. Kaiein thought to himself as he tried to drown the noise out by singing a song lyrics of Avenged Sevenfold and AFI, which is another one of his favorite bands. A few seconds later, tell me right now where you're taking me, the robber shouted. Blam. The robber tried hard to cry out in pain from yet another punch delivered to his mouth by Kaiein, only to find himself unable to open his jaws to do so. Kaiein had kept true to his promise of making him shut up by breaking his jaw. I really do hate repeating myself. And I hate people who talk more than me just as much. Now shut up like I told you to. Not that you have much choice now, Kaiein said, getting back in his face again. He only nodded his head while grimacing out of pure malice, pure agony. Good boy. Kaiein responded before patting the man twice on the cheek, making him grunt in pain. A few more moments passed before Kaiein was on the roof. The robber was no longer trying to struggle. Man. I lost my place right here. Yeah, no idea what Kaiein was about to do. Hang on, I'm trying to. Yeah, I kind of lost my place there, guys. Sorry about that. I had no idea what Kaiein was about to do, but considering what had been done so far, his traumatized mind wouldn't put anything past him. Okay, tough guys, time to play a little game that I like to call Splat. Simple name for one-time game with simple rules. Kaiein said while looking down at the robber as he walked towards the edge of the skyscraper. Before another thought could go through the robber's head, he found himself dangling by his ankle high above the city streets, with the only thing keeping him from falling to his death being the hand of a madman that had shown him what a worse killer than him could look like. The whole time, he expected to see an evil smile come across this person's face any second, but all you saw and continued to see was a emotionless look in his eyes. Almost like a physical manifestation of death itself. Okay, here's how the game goes. And listen close because I'm only going to say it once. I'm going to ask you a question with one answer to that question. Get it right, I'll let you live. But get it wrong, considering this is close to a 700-foot drop, the bottom line, with a pun intended there, is that you're screwed. Kaiein explained. Robert only nodded his head, terrified muffles taking the place of his words. Is he going to drop him? You can't do that to the key orchestrator of the crimes before we find out the full motives, let alone a trial and a sentence. The police officers told Lupe down at ground level. Lupe only looked on. He was listening to everything that came from Kain's mouth with his keen ears. He knew Kain had his morals, but they weren't 100% black and white. They had many spots of gray to them, which was another reason that he knew Kain had hated being called a hero. While noble, Kain's way of doing things were in that thin line between heroism and vigilantism, with Kain knowing he was more towards the latter. But Kain's morals... Lupe had become unsure himself as if he actually was keeping the best of them in mind now, given how Kain had a habit of becoming somewhat unhinged when evil was afoot. A trait that made Lupe wonder at times if Kain had the capacity to be just as much an animal as him if he was given enough reason to lose control. Back at the top of the skyscraper. Okay, here's the question. Why did you do it? Why did you send that innocent couple to the hospital? Give me one good answer to why you did it. Two elderly people, man and woman, husband and wife, till death do us part, and yet you may have paid the way for death today for them both. Just tell me why, and also why I shouldn't just kill you right here and now. Kain yelled at the top of his lungs with each word, his grip tightening and loosening while sparks shot from his eyes. The man tried to mumble the words, but couldn't get them out. Wrong answer, Kain said. Kain, damn it, he can't speak to answer. Lupe shouted out. And that's the problem, his problem, not mine. Just as his problem, he doesn't have a pair of wings. Kaiein shouted back. And with that, Kaiein, no! Lupe yelled up in disbelief. After Kaiein dropped him, the streets below became filled with screams once more as the robber fell several hundred feet with a single long closed mouth scream coming from his lungs. However, when he was close to the ground, they all watched as Kaiein aimed his bow at an arc and shot an arrow. The projectile ricocheted off the wrought iron railing of a balcony several stories down the skyscraper opposite of the one he was standing on. The robber suddenly found himself no longer falling and noticed that he was hanging from the side of the building by a shirt collar. The arrow Kaiein shot had kept him from hitting the ground, with it being buried in the building at an angle. As he looked down, he saw that his feet were only a few feet from the sidewalk. Lupe looked back up at the top of the skyscraper and shot an angry glare at Kaiein while the police and paramedics rushing towards the robber to apprehend and also give medical attention to him. Lupe realized that Kaiein had all this planned out and Dusk felt outsmarted again. He had to admit that as his look of contempt became a smile that his rival got him good this time. "You son of a bitch," Lupe said under his breath before clapping, which led to the crowd also cheering and clapping. Kaiein, however, turned away from the edge and walked back to the waiting elevator. For some reason, he felt his mind become overtaken with sadness. He had done what he had set out to do with no casualties that he could help prevent, which was the main thing that mattered to him. So why the feeling of shame? Kaiein figured it may have been a mood swing that came with his health conditions. While Kaiein didn't suffer any physical diseases or sickness due to being immune to all of them per his species, psychological disorders were different. He had bipolar disorder, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder and clinical depression. Also, while coming up to the top of the roof was indeed to scare the criminal in ways that would be effective degree of encouragement to quit his profession, as someone who also suffered from a generalized anxiety disorder that was especially problematic when around crowds, Kaiein brought the criminal to the roof as an excuse to get away from the crowd below. Mood swings, stages of depression that could last for weeks, changing sleep patterns when he slept, which was rare. Other things besides. He was more in control of it all than he had been years before, but the main thing that concerned him at the moment was that he could tell when it was of his afflictions or something else. And this time it wasn't the former. Instead of walking the rest of the way to the elevator, Kaiein just sat down before pulling his cell phone out of his pocket. He dialed Lupe's number and waited. "Hello?" Lupe said at ground level. "Hey, I need you to bring me up some fresh clothes," Kaiein said, looking at the ground. "Sure thing. Are you okay?" Lupe asked. Kaiein hung up the phone and breathed deeply. Lupe stared at his phone blankly before closing it. He understood and in response looked at one of the police officers. "Is it possible for me and him to leave without any problems, namely without a crowd swamping us?" Lupe asked. The officer looked over at the captain who was still unconscious and back at Lupe. "We can take it from here, though the media I can't make any promises about, so you have to be quick," the officer said. "We'll manage. Plus, I'm pretty sure he's already got plenty of attention from them as is, but that can't be helped," Lupe says he started to walk off. He, however, was stopped as the police officer put his hand to his shoulder, leaned to Lupe, turned around. "Need something else?" Lupe asked. Yeah. All I guess I should say, police officer said as he took off his hat and rubbed his forehead, trying to get out the words, while other members of police, law enforcement crowded around with the same look of nervousness. Finally, a response came from them in multiple salutes. Lupe gave a slight chuckle before saluting back. "You're welcome. I'll tell Kaiein you said thanks also," Lupe answered before running over to his truck and opening one of Kain's bags in the back. Grabbing a full set of clothes and shoes before running once more towards a tall structure that his friend was waiting at the top of. Lupe sprinted faster and faster until he reached his maximum running speed. Then, with a quick foot plant on the side of the building, he surprised everyone who was watching by running straight up the side with no signs of gravity affecting him. But Lupe didn't see the strange bird watching him from a flagpole on the building across from him. "Took you long enough," Kaiein said calmly when Lupe finally made it to the top. Lupe tossed Kaiein his clothes and watched him go behind one of the smokestacks to change. A few minutes later, Kaiein walked back out wearing a pair of baggy, dark-colored jeans ripped at the knees, a pair of Converse, another black tank top, and a jacket that was exactly the same as his previous one that he had been wearing. His body still had dry blood and ashes all over it, but it was nothing he couldn't clean up when he had a water source. Lupe noticed a sad look on Kain's face. "What's troubling you?" Lupe asked. "I don't know. Doesn't feel like a bipolar down face. I'm unsure what it is," Kaiein answered as he shrugged his shoulders. "Well, you know how you are about humans, given that even when they are evil-hearted, you still have care and motives towards them. Just get a few hours and it'll pass," Lupe explained. Kaiein nodded his head, though he felt that wasn't it either. "You want to go get something to eat before we head to the school?" "Assume nothing else happens?" Lupe asked, changing the subject. "Yeah, but first I need to take care of something," Kaiein said. "What?" Lupe asked. Kaiein slowly turned his head, narrowing his eyes as he looked over at the next building and pointed at the strange bird perched on the flagpole. I find it kind of strange that a Galapagos hawk is on this side of the planet far away from its natural habitat. Kaiein said as an intense look came over him. Lupe looked over and saw the bird. You have a point. Why would a bird like that be in Ravenlock Hollow? Lupe asked. Because it's not a real bird, Lupe. Kaiein stepped forward quickly, aiming his bow, firing a shot directly at the flagpole and scaring the creature into flight. If that would have been a real Galapagos hawk, it would have possibly stayed where it was because they're known for not scaring easily. Though there's likely a difference between someone being close enough to observe them and the arrow being shot at them. Still, seems we had just had a spy on our hands. Kaiein said before putting the bow back around his shoulder. Mira had seen everything that happened on the streets below before tracking Kaiein and Lupe down. The speed that the werewolf had shown, the marksman's skills with a bow and arrow ability to instill fear that the other one had excelled at. It had all become clear to him, and after he reported back to his friends, they would know just as well. So that little shape-shifting creep had been watching us the whole time? Lupe asked after I kind of explained to him. Without a doubt, but it's not important at the moment, though this may put a few complications on arrival at the university if him and his little girlfriends decide to show up before we get there, Kaiein said. Well, given that encounter with them that we had on the way here, why do you think they're in the city, hanging in the city instead of the school anyway? Lupe asked. I'll deduce it's because they don't feel safe at the school. I mean, as long as they aren't there when we arrive, we shouldn't have any difficulties in completing the orientation. But the issue is that if they feel unsafe now that they've been attacked anyway from the usual stomping grounds, then they may go back sooner than they plan for feeling unsafe in the city as well, Kaiein explained still. You have a point, especially considering we caused some damage to two of them only seconds apart. Lupe said calmly. We'll worry about that when and if the time comes. Right now, I just want to eat and get over there before something else interrupts us, Kaiein said before walking into the elevator, pressing the button for the bottom floor. As they waited, Lupe's ears twisted around quickly. He then stared at Kaiein. Why didn't you just jump down to the ground? It's not like the fall would hurt either of us, he asked. Just didn't feel like it, honestly, Kaiein replied. Or you just wanted to torture me with this horrible music, Lupe shot back. Kaiein grinned slightly out of knowing that it was more painful to Lupe due to the sensitivity of his ears. That too, Kaiein said calmly. Dick, Lupe replied. When he and Lupe got to the bottom, Kaiein walked over to his motorcycle. The press were interviewing the kids that Kaiein had saved earlier, and the police were all occupied with the robbers, and nothing was stopping them from leaving. However, before Kaiein could see himself on the bike and start it up, Lupe walked over and pushed it to his truck. Dude, what the hell are you doing? Kaiein said as he followed Lupe. Lupe put his bike on the back of his truck and tied it down before he turned to look at Kaiein. I'm not letting you drive, all right? You may think you're fooling me, but you're not seeing as you're exhausted aside from depressed. Regardless of you being immune to physical illness, you know your mind can't still take its toll on your body in other ways. You lost more blood than you realize, not to mention some of those spirits may have had something to do with it since you rarely use that dark drive. What I don't understand is that usually you take more than what you want on a day and still have a huge amount of energy to spare. So what's the deal? Lupe said, sounding concerned. Kaiein took his bow off his shoulder and put it under the seat of the truck before getting in the passenger side, followed by Lupe, who got behind the wheel. They drove away from the scene. Kaiein took a deep breath before speaking. I haven't slept at all in the past month. Like, not a single hour. All night, every night, I found myself sitting up in bed because anytime I sleep, I have nightmares. So I've been forcing myself to stay awake by writing. What makes it worse is that it's always that same fucking nightmare, Kaiein explained to him. The one about him, right? Lupe asked. Yeah, the one I told you about. I'm in my room. I hear screams outside, so I go to look and find Mom and Dad on the floor decapitated, with him standing over them. He looks at me and just walks away smiling. That's different than how it actually happened, Kaiein said. I remember all too well what really happened again. I was the one that found you afterwards, Lupe said. What I hate the most is that this damn blade I've got on my back at this very moment is what was used to kill them. It's all I have left aside from a fucking written will inheritance that I really could care less about. Yeah, I have a huge house and all the money I could need to get anything I desire, which is something so many people could only dream of happening to them. But it comes from events that I'd give anything up to be, give everything up to be able to go back and prevent occurring. You're right though that I'm exhausted. If I was to fight him right now, I'd probably end up the same with Harris just because I wouldn't be in the shape to stand against him, Kaiein said as he looked out the window. You can't keep that attitude, otherwise you're going to be getting beaten by him for sure. I know it hurts to keep thinking back to what happened, but it can't be helped, so make that loss into a game, but otherwise don't dwell on it. You've been blaming yourself these past 9 years because of what happened to your parents, but you have to understand that it was your fault. I mean, how the hell could anyone ever prepare for something like that? Lupe told him. Lupe, you just don't understand. If I can't protect my parents, then how the hell can I protect anyone I care about? I've known left in my bloodline except one person, and we both know the story there. Kaiein replied as he kept his head turned, his voice cracking a little bit. Tears in his eyes were made obvious to Lupe, even though Kaiein had been trying to conceal them. He could smell the faint scent of salt on Kaien's face. Just let it out, Kaiein, Lupe said, patting him on the back. Lupe, what if I can't win? We're letting down every person that's died by his hands, Kaiein said, trying to wipe the tears from his eyes. You'll find a way, Lupe replied. How can you be certain? Kaiein asked. Because you always have with all the adversity you faced, Lupe said with a smile on his face. How many times have I heard that one before? Kaiein said sarcastically. Same amount of times you've proven it. Most dire and hopeless times that are where you're the best at what you're capable of, Lupe reassured him. Kaiein was quiet for the next couple blocks. Feel like I could go for some pizza, Kaiein said abruptly a few minutes later, glancing at his watch and seeing it was now noon. All right, Lupe replied, making a turn at the next corner and coming to the side of a pizzeria only a couple blocks away. He then realized that over an hour had passed since the transformer in response concentrated his thoughts. Their white flash of light, Lupe reverted to his human appearance. Back at school. Why did she leave again? Scarlet asked Fiona as they walked to the lunchroom since they could finally speak. Aside from the aura she had sensed a while before, Fiona had just explained to Scarlet everything that happened in the Country Myths and Legends class before Scarlet had got there, seeing as she had shown up a little late. She was still having trouble believing that Dusk had left like she had. I've already explained it, and honestly, I can't blame Dusk for running off like she has. Regardless, I talked to Mr. Kendrick before going back to the classroom. He's upset. He's not upset with Dusk. He's just worried as I am, Fiona said. I told you that Dusk will be alright, but I can't say the same for the one who insulted her if he ever comes back from the nurse's station. I bet he's stalling for time somehow to keep them from sending him back out here, Scarlet said. He's not as important as they should hand, Scarlet. Dusk isn't well and she's worrying me, Fiona said. Okay, look, it's still unknown to me how she could use the Crimson Razor Wind, but it's still just a dark drive. It's as natural as breathing. Case closed, Scarlet said in irritation. I object to closing the case. You nor Dusk breathe, Fiona argued. Scarlet narrowed her eyes. As natural as having sex, then. Objection overruled, Scarlet retorted. Dusk is a virgin. Objection sustained, Fiona replied. Dusk is a virgin? A male student says he walked by Fiona and Scarlet. Try to change that and you'll die one, Scarlet said calmly while giving an angry glare that countered the calmness as the student suddenly walked faster, glancing back constantly to make sure Scarlet hadn't chased him. She looked back at Fiona. Scarlet noticed that she was giving her the same narrowed-eyed expression. As natural as your knack for being a widget. Overruled, Scarlet said. This resulted in Fiona's eyes going wide and giving her a gasp. Dick move, Scarlet, Fiona whined. Scarlet grinned as she looked at her phone. What, that I'm looking at the widgets on my phone? Personally, one of my favorites is the calculator I use to decide how to split a restaurant bill if I financially come up short, Scarlet stated. The grin widened to where her fangs slightly showed. I hate you, Fiona said, puffing up her cheeks as she crossed her arms and looked away. Normally, the word widget was a term for a computer application or a small mechanical device. For Scarlet, it was a portmanteau of witch and midget that she called her friend to joke about how short she was. And Scarlet's 5'1" height was the main reason why it triggered Fiona so much. She'd been called Shorty and had "you must be this tall to ride" jokes made about her by people who are well above her height. But to be called short by someone who herself was below average height for a female, she felt that was even more of an insult. In her thoughts, she imagined a scene from one of her favorite manga as a chibi version of herself stood in the middle of a burning town with a giant wall surrounding it. Peeking over the wall was Scarlet, colossal in height and mocking Fiona with that fang-exposed grin. All the while, Fiona flailed her tiny arms wildly as she yelled high-pitched profanity at Scarlet. Still, while she hated being called Widget, Fiona had earned another nickname from some of the students on campus that she actually liked. The right hook that she had given the student in defense of Dusk earlier wasn't the first time that Fiona had shown her classmates she had an explosive punch inside a small package, which led to many calling her Cherry Bomb in reference to that, as well as her red hair. As Scarlet and Fiona stepped into the lunchroom, they noticed Ren, Finch, and Crow all sitting at a table by themselves. Across from them at the next table were a large group of female students whose hushed whispers, biting of lips, and intense lustful staring made all too obvious the thought of the new arrivals. Jeez, wolves on the prowl again, it seems, Fiona joked. Why should it matter? The only one of them worth dating will probably be Ren anyway, assuming he doesn't just up and vanish on them as well, Scarlet said coldly. Is that one of your typical species racist conclusions? Not to mention still sore feelings from him leaving without saying goodbye, Fiona asked. Then what if it is? Look, I trust who I want to trust, and given me and Ren grew up together, aside from him being a fellow vampire, that's the only reason I trust him. Those other two I could do without, Scarlet explained. Me and you didn't grow up together, and I'm not a vampire, yet you trust me, Fiona said, being technical. That's beside the point, Widget, Scarlet said in reply. Fiona saw past it. Any other time Scarlet's nickname for her would have struck a nerve. But she could tell Scarlet was fighting dirty to try and force her to yield on pressing the matter. Challenge accepted. At what point is there you made aside from being pretty much one of the most confusing examples of sociopath I've ever seen? You won't trust anything except another vampire, yet you trust me and a small select other students here who aren't vampires. And you say you won't trust Crow or Finch, yet you trust Ren, who though a vampire chooses to be friends with them. Paradoxes don't have points, Scarlet, and all those factors are completely legit examples of paradoxes, Fiona explained, being even more witty. I'm not sitting with them, Fiona, and I'm not a paradox, Scarlet said angrily. She dodged giving an explanation once pressured, just as Fiona knew she would. Well, you do what you want, but I'm going to go sit with them. Crow and Finch seemed nice enough. Not to mention I owe them both an apology for how I acted towards them earlier, when Crow was going testing and when Finch tried to introduce himself. Fiona said before grabbing a tray. After getting her food, Fiona then proceeded to skip and hop as if all of a sudden full of energy to where they were seated. Scarlet shook her head with a look of disgust on her face. I've suddenly lost my appetite, Scarlet said to herself before walking out of the lunchroom and back into the dorm lobby before sitting down in the shade by herself. She was the only one in the lobby, which she was kind of thankful for, but even so, she felt lonely. Dusk was somewhere in the city, and since the sun was out, Scarlet couldn't go find her. Oki was on room rest, and Fiona was having lunch with the new students who ran aside she didn't want to be around. But as lonely as she was now, she would never admit it to anyone. As Fiona closed the distance between herself and the three new arrivals, all the other girls at opposite tables showed looks of jealousy aside from envy, seeing as every one of them was scared to sit next to, let alone talk to them out of shyness. Hey, do you guys mind if I have lunch with you? Fiona asked politely. It would be an exhilarating and positive presence. No, we do not mind at all, Ren responded. Fiona sat down in between Crow and Finch, but then found herself feeling awkward. She heard Crow's feelings a while ago, and then treated Finch with disrespect. What could she say without sounding stupid in front of them? It's okay, Fiona. I forgive you, Crow said, catching her off guard. Well, I was going to apologize for earlier, but how did you know considering I didn't say it yet? Fiona asked. I forgive you also, Finch added in. Fiona turned her head back and forth, looking at the both of them in confusion. Maybe I should explain. Fiona, Finch is a medium, Ren explained. A medium? I mean, he looks like his shirt size is probably along those lines, but what does that have to do with them knowing I wanted to apologize? Fiona asked. There was awkward silence for the next few seconds. It was through this that Fiona realized she was oblivious to something she had misinterpreted from Ren. I meant not a concept of body mass and stature. When I said medium, I was referring to an at times lesser definition of what is commonly known as a psychic. Finch has the ability to read people's minds. Ren explained. I knew before you even came to sit down that you were wanting to apologize to both of us. Not that either of us were actually mad at you. Regardless, I told Crow using telepathy so that we could both tell you that we accept, saving you the trouble of trying to get it out and failing to do so. So I worry or how we'd out of worry how we'd act towards you. Speaking of which, hold on a second, Finch told her. As Fiona sat there surprised at Finch's words, she watched him turn around and stare at the girls at the other table. From the look on his face, he had been reading other people's minds aside from Fiona's. And the look was a telltale sign that thoughts were disturbing to say the least. Really? You know all you were perverted, right? Finch said, pointing fingers. He turned his head to each of them. What are you talking about? One of the girls said. Dude, what is it? Ren asked him. Finch glanced back at Ren and over at Crow, who both suddenly showed looks almost similar to Finch. Whatever thoughts he had heard were now known to them as well. Hot wax, handcuffs, and a Bill Clinton mask? Crow blurted out, causing one of the girls to go wide-eyed. A banana, a box full of gerbils, and a cattle prod. Quite the dirty imagination, Ren said afterwards. Surprising another girl, she let out a shocked gasp. Though it was quite possibly not just from Ren's knowledge of her intentions, but how calm he was in mentioning it. Finch, however, just turned back around, his face blushing fire engine red. Whatever one of the girls had been thinking about him was seemingly too terrified to say out loud. I'm never going to set foot on a farm again, Finch said, a shudder going through his body. In the city, Dusk was flying high above the streets and buildings. Usually whenever she was upset, she found that one of the only things that could calm her mind was being alone in a stress-free environment. She floated among the cumulonimbus clouds around her as she looked far below at the people in their daily lives. The sun high above, and the clear sky above the horizon. A thought was inside her head of how she was lucky to be able to experience all this considering what she was, as well as where she had been prior to Raven Rock. Still, at the moment, none of these thoughts or sights were helping her because she was far more upset than usual. She looked at her hands yet again, just like as she had been doing since the incident only a few hours ago, and saw once more that even compared to her usual undead paleness, she was even more so now and wasn't a pleasant thing to see for her. Being dead was enough hardship in itself, but after she lost the ability to cry normal tears, it had gotten to a point where Dusk any little thing that made her feel less human would drive her over the edge to a greater degree than the previous loss. It was why she envied Scarlet in some ways. She had a typical heart of a vampire, that although dead and still, a state to it would kill her as if the heart was still alive. Scarlet had never felt a heartbeat at all, nor has she ever cried normal tears to miss it. Such a lack of living human traits may have been why Scarlet was so cold towards them. She never had to know the pain of longing for existence that had been taken away from her. The warm feeling of being alive that Dusk missed, yet also somewhat wished that she had never known to miss in the first place. As Dusk continued flying, she reached under her shirt, grasping a small object that she had wrapped in a strip of cloth and tucked in the waistline of her skirt before taking it to her wrist. Her friends were unaware that she still had this habit. But Dusk was prone to self-harm, through cutting herself with a razor blade, using physical pain to take her mind off worse pain to hurt more, psychological trauma. It was all impulsive behavior, and Dusk couldn't control it nearly as well compared to those who did so only to get attention, openly showing their wounds just to get a reaction from people and who can control themselves quite easily. Her isolation was a means of making sure that no one saw her self-inflicted injuries before she healed, which even with the extremely quick nature of her body's recovery from wounds, it wasn't a chance she wanted to take in a building full of over 500 students plus staff. For her, bleeding was one of the last things she had that made her seem human. In her mind, if she could ever live and be normal again, she would be happy and at peace. Something she considered impossible as long as she was dead. In truth, she knew there was a way to live again and have her humanity back. Death of Lord Serac. But he wouldn't be killed so easily by anyone, and who in their right mind would even attempt to stand up to him for her sake? Scarlet was strong and wise, but with so much pride in who she was, what she was. Dusk, however, saw herself as frail and stupid for not having the strength to push past her existential crisis and simply be content with who she was. Stupid for being so sad all the time to where she couldn't be more secure and stop what was practically an addiction. As the blood from her wrist took the long fall to the ground below, Dusk watched as the fresh cut healed only a few minutes later, almost a reminder that she was stuck in an existence that she herself couldn't end. Why can't I just have the true death compared to this fucking shell? What did I ever do to deserve this? Dusk said out loud before cutting in the same area each time the wound closed back up, closing her eyes tight from the pain. Then she felt nothing. Upon opening her eyes, she saw that the reason being that her nerves had been completely severed and the white heel bone showed through the wound. She then screamed in anger as the wound quickly started to heal again, followed by a torrent of blood pouring from her arm. Below in the city, Kaiein and Lupe were walking out of the pizzeria. Kaiein cleaned himself up with Lupe changing clothes and tossing away the tattered rags and shoes his previous outfit had become. Due to protests from the customers and the employees after Kaiein had walked in covered in blood and ash, they grabbed the two pieces to go since they weren't allowed to dine in. As he and Lupe walked towards the truck, Kaiein felt something dripped on his face. Upon wiping his cheek with his hand, he saw that it was blood. The hell? Kaiein said as he looked at the crimson liquid in his hand. I thought you cleaned yourself up. Lupe asked upon noticing it. It's not from me, in case you haven't noticed. Fresh as if from an open wound, and also cold considering it fell from... Oh god, please don't tell me Aphrodite is on her period or something. Kaiein said, a look of disgust on his face. Lupe looked up. Well, if that's her right there, she seems to be visiting from Olympus. Want to ask her yourself? Lupe said, what are you on about? I mean, I know I'm the better looking out of the two of us, but why would she come down and see me without letting me know first? Kaiein said in sarcasm. He looked up, barely missed making out a black speck in the sky. Kaien's vision was peaked to a point where he could see far more distant objects, and it was his eyesight attributed to his marksmanship with a bow. But the moment he was only able to see as well as Lupe could because sunlight or sources of bright light limited his sight like anyone else. Lupe was able to notice more due to his very keen sense of smell. Tears, blood, and also perfume. Last scent tells me, of course, that it's a girl. She's in emotional pain, though also she has a similar scent. Lupe said as he sniffed the air. He wasn't in his werewolf form, but his senses were just as keen. Well, it's obvious that she's not human since she can fly, but why is she just floating there? Kaiein wondered as he kept his eyes on the small form. The answer was unknown to them at the time, but the truth was that Dusk had become sick again. But not from the dark drive's effects, which had worn off. Instead, it was from the sunlight. Dusk wasn't affected by the sun nearly as much when she was on the ground, but being so high in the air was an exception to her immunity, and the fact that she had just lost a lot of blood didn't help matters. While it still wouldn't kill her directly, it still had other effects. What's going on? Dusk mouthed, unable to get out a clear sentence between her grunts of fatigue and shortness of breath. And at that, Kaiein, I think she's fallen, Lupe said as he narrowed his eyes to the sunlight. Kaiein quickly ran to the truck and grabbed a pair of binoculars off the back to make up for his limitation in vision from the bright rays. Upon looking through them, he saw that Lupe was right. The girl had fainted and was now falling to her death from over 3,000 feet in the air. Into chapter 4. Alright guys, so obviously, that was a more action-heavy chapter there. The previous chapter, of course, had, the little slight, not really a fight, but, the encounter between Dusk and Hell's Prophets. Was that in the previous chapter? No, that was in chapter 2, actually. Alright, yeah, that was in chapter 2. But chapter, 3, the previous chapter had, the, bar fight and all that, and this one, of course, had, the whole robbers thing, and Kaiein had, having a short encounter with Dimitri. So it was more action-heavy. There was, a lot, more, I kind of, was showing here in regards to trying to flesh out Kaiein and Lupe a bit more in regards to their personalities. And, so yeah. And obviously, this ended on a big cliffhanger here in regards to, Dusk's fate. And also kind of, definitely showed that there was going to, be a little bit something going on in regards to, the next chapter with, the lunch scene with, Luke, with, Fiona and the, Fiona, Ren, Finch, and Crow. Which is going to be a pretty interesting little scenario there as well. So things are definitely starting to move forward with this. The next chapter is going to be chapter 5, Blame It on the Duck. Trust me, there's a reason for the chapter being named that. You guys will see. It's going to be a bit of a running joke in that it's going to be happening in the book. But yeah, so chapter 5, that will be next Wednesday. Which of course will be like, the first book reading in the new year. So yeah, all in all, this was like one that I was really excited to read just because like the whole robber scene thing. I know that some might definitely cry foul of the whole fact of Kaien's like archery skills being like a bit too broken, and the fact of how he can ricochet and everything. But the main thing to keep in mind here is that he's superhuman, and obviously things that would normally be possible in the world of humans, like normal humans, obviously are going to be very different in this whole scenario. Because the fact, like I had mentioned, Kaiein has like a lot stronger, like when he uses his bow, it has like a lot more force behind it. So obviously, in the physics of some things, such as like in regards to his arrows, you think like, of course, there's the whole factor that his arrows would probably like splinter or break just from like making impact with something. But again, I kind of like just set this in the whole thing of like things that normally would be possible in the world of mortals. Definitely, a lot of rules can be bent here and everything. So that was like the whole thing, like the whole ricochet thing. You're gonna see like Kaien's like archery skills like being even more broken moving forward. But that's kind of thing, he's not Hawkeye, he's not Green Arrow, he's not like just someone who's got like very good marksman skills. He's someone who's got like superhuman abilities that kind of like accent like his marksmanship. So with that being said, that's the end of chapter 4. Next week will be chapter 5. But also kind of like giving you guys like a little bit of like a heads up on something as well. I'll probably be doing like a little community post about it after the stream. There is gonna be something special I'm gonna be doing tomorrow. I have some things that came in the mail yesterday and today, and I'm gonna be doing an unboxing. And also, it's a stream I'm really excited about, dedicated to like one of my favorite game series. Something I play, games I played, or something I play like See now I'm like stuttering now. I'm finishing doing the book reading, but yeah, it's something I'm gonna be doing like based around a game from a game series. That in this game I've done like multiple on a few different charity streams, as well as like something I did like with Mickey D43 years back, where we did like a co-op let's play of it. So I'm gonna be playing that tomorrow while also doing the unboxing, and let's just say it's gonna be like something that's gonna be showing you guys like probably like it's gonna be a stream. Definitely, it's gonna show like a lot of like my geek knowledge and everything on some stuff. So I don't know what time I'm gonna go live with it, but it is gonna be a gaming stream. Like I said, we're still like somewhat on like the hiatus from full-time streaming, but I will be coming off of that on January 1st. But this is something I'm going to be excited about tomorrow. Don't know how long the stream's going to last. Don't know when I'm going to go live. But you guys will see what I got planned. It's something I'm really excited about. But anyways, until the next one, Rogues, much love. Thank you to those who came out and hung out with me for this. And, who, compared to some people in the chat who weren't, like, trying to be an annoyance and everything. But anyways, until next stream, much love. You guys be safe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Thanks so much for watching my stream. If you like my content and want to see more, be sure to follow me and hit that notification bell. You can also find me on Instagram and join my Guilded server to hang out and join in on occasional movie nights, as well as check out my TikTok where I post comic book clips for my live streams. If you're an aspiring streamer, my website contains a collection of over a dozen completely free text guides with advice to help you get started. Sections dedicated to proper networking, reports to channel panels, handling dead air, and many other topics. You can find a link to my website on my YouTube channel. See you guys next time.